Dana Moriello, and you're listening to This Is a Thing, the podcast where I interview entrepreneurs who started unusual businesses and found success on their own terms. We talk to them about how they got their wild ideas, how they decided to act on those ideas, and how they've grown. Today, we're talking to Peter Bellerby, founder of Bellerby & Co. Globemakers. I first met Peter when he gave a talk at the Explorers Club here in New York City. When he told his story at the club, he began by saying that he decided he would build a globe for his dad's 80th birthday. And he got so engaged and so interested in the project that he decided to turn it into a business. I was inspired, I was fascinated, and I also left with a lot of questions. How exactly did this passion project turn into a business? It felt like there was something missing here in Peter's story about his decision-making, which I just really wanted to know. And I had a feeling that I and a lot of us could learn a great deal from it. So meet Peter. He makes globes out of his London studio with his team completely by hand with an absolutely incredible level of craftsmanship, a level that was maybe common in the 16, 17, 1800s, but is virtually unheard of today. If you want a custom globe that is hand-painted to notate every place you've traveled, where your family lineage is from, or the story of your great love, he and team can do that. They can do just about anything. That level of craftsmanship is understandably expensive. His smallest non-customized desk globes start at about £1,000, and large customized globes can go well into the six-figure range. Customers are passionate individuals, collectors, and institutions like museums. Please go check out his Instagram in the show notes. These globes just have to be seen to believed. And the last thing, because this is primarily an audio medium and many of you will not see Peter on the screen, I just have to describe this scene for you. Peter talked to me from his study at home with one of his blue collared sweaters that he said he owns about 20 of and always wears for interviews. He was in a darkly lit room, painted dark blue with oil-painted portraits and black and white photographs in the background, and one of his cats, Bucket, crawling across his lap while we talked. I paint the scene for you because everything about it really drives home the point that Peter is operating at the highest level of a craft that is backed by centuries of tradition. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation with Peter as much as I enjoyed having it. The most famous part of your origin story with Bellerby is that you were looking for a birthday gift for your dad's 80th birthday and couldn't find a globe that met your standards, so you set out to make your own. What was it that made you think, I can't find something for my dad, so I'm going to make it, versus I'm just going to move on to something else or get him something that's available?
There were so many coincidences happening. I'd been doing this previous job, and I'd kind of finished that. I'd been doing some property developing, and I'd finished that and done quite well. And I was going to go back into doing more of that because it's something I like doing and I'm good at. But I'd never really done it professionally. I was just doing it sort of one house at a time. And then the financial crisis came along. So that was like, okay, well, I'm not investing anything. I'm going to just sit back for a bit and see what's going to happen with the world. That same timing was the time I was looking for something for my dad. And I wasn't looking to get a globe to begin with. I was just thinking to get something other than socks, alcohol, whatever. And I came across the thought that a globe was a good idea. Couldn't find any, as you know. I in map stores, as I went to auction houses, started bidding. There was just nothing that really fitted the bill, and I love sort of making things. As a child, I would get toys and I would take them all apart and then try and put them back together again, and usually fail. But that's always been part of my psyche. I've always wanted to understand how things work. I had a beautiful old car in the early 2000s, a 1960s car. I was lucky enough, I got on very well with my mechanic, and I would go to his garage and we would do the work together. And I like working with my hands. So the idea of making a little sphere, get a bit of metal to go around it, a wooden stand, put some paper on it, do some painting, seemed to me very, very easy and something I could do for a few months whilst I was thinking about what I was going to do. And that was it. There was nothing beyond that. And then it all obviously changed because it took me so long to kind of work it out. It took me 2 years. Within 3 or 4 months, I'd already made the biggest decision was that I was going to turn this into a company because I knew my expenditure was already way above 10,000. I don't even know, but I was spending crazy money. I was having to get patterns and molds made for the spheres. I was having to speak to foundries to try and find someone who could do the metal work for me. I was having to buy tooling. You can't just buy hand saws, you have to buy proper machinery. So I relatively quickly made the decision that this was something I would turn into a company, and my dad would just happen to get the first one that was made, although it was.
And you said so much in that story that I want to unpack. So first, I just want to talk about your career decisions before doing this. You were in property development. You owned a bowling alley nightclub, if I understand. What guided your career decisions before this?
I've always wanted to work for myself. So I spent my days kind of trying to do that, but without having done my time first, or without any connections, or without any particular marvelous ideas. I tried and failed at a few things. I helped friends try and set up businesses. I always wanted to be my own boss. I hated being at school, being told what to do. I'm very much someone who I love trying and failing my own way. My father was quite tough. I'm quite Victorian. My brother and I would be told not only to do things, but how to do them. And I'd be really frustrated. The most fun part of any job is working out how to do it. And if someone tells you step by step how to do it, you could get anyone to do it. I used to get in trouble a lot as a kid by trying to do things my own way.
You mentioned that you had a lot of trials in entrepreneurship of starting things before this current business. What did you learn from some of those trials that are informing how you're working today?
I certainly have learned that it's you as a person who is going to make something fail or not. There are tons of ideas that could be amazing that fail because the person doing it isn't doing it correctly, or doesn't quite understand that you have to work 18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week for the first 5 years. Otherwise, you might as well give up. I mean, maybe not 5 years, maybe a couple of years, but you have to put in the time. If you are lucky enough to have an idea and do 9 to 5 and it still takes off, then you're either a genius or you've just got some amazing luck. But on the whole, the previous thing I did with this friend, which was setting up this music venue, which had a bowling alley, diner, karaoke rooms, and I'd never even worked the other side of a bar. We had no idea, and I think in the first week we turned over £1,500 in a week or something. Within 4 months, we were turning over £125,000 a week. It turned into the coolest venue in London. We had all the indie scene down there. Amy Winehouse was down there with all her buddies, and we had the whole music scene down there when that scene was around. I was literally working 18 hours a day every day of the week, and I went home at Christmas on Christmas Eve, and I slept from Christmas Eve till Boxing Day. I missed the whole of Christmas Day. You get your own luck in entrepreneurship, and I think a lot of it is actually understanding that you have to put in an awful lot of time, and don't ever be afraid to fail. Try things out, and also try and find something you're passionate about. Don't do something just for numbers. I did something years ago and I learnt a bit by it, but the biggest thing I learnt about it was the fact that I didn't give it up because it wasn't working. I gave it up because it was deathly boring. It was just numbers. It was like a pizza franchise. It was this weird thing that I was putting small ovens and point of sale materials in pubs, of which we've got thousands in this country, and it's difficult for them to provide food, and this kind of somewhat circumnavigated their food situation. and it worked quite well. But do I want to be talking about how many pizzas we're selling every week for the rest of my life? No, no. I did it for a year and a bit, and then I just thought, no, I don't care if I make 50 million. I don't want to be called the Pizza King when I'm older.
This idea of we need to know what success means to us and find it. And finances is one piece of that puzzle, but not the entire puzzle. And I heard you talk about the nightlife venue that you ran, and it sounds like from a revenue perspective, you were certainly growing. In your eyes, was that a success for what you were looking to achieve? And why did you decide to move on?
It was an amazing success. I on every metric. We actually didn't plan for it to be a music venue at the beginning. We planned for it to be multifaceted, but we didn't imagine that we would be putting on gigs there. And then we had some promoters come down soon after we opened, and they just said this would be brilliant for hosting. And we're like, well, we don't have any of the kit. And they said, don't worry, we'll bring all the kit. And the first gig we had down there, the venue held 450 people. I think we probably had 650, 700 people. We didn't have any security because up until that first gig, we'd never had more than about 60 or 70 people in the venue. It was completely crazy. It was a wonderful venue in every metric, and I left just because running clubs, bars it's a tough business. And I had a run in with some I don't know whether you call them the Camden Mafia, but there's a big drug scene in every nightclub. It's too much. I would every night I would knock off and have a pint, and then it would be 2 pints, and then someone else would knock off, and then I'd join them. It's hard work and hard on the body to be doing that. I did 3.5 years, I think, and then I just felt that I would kill myself if I did it much longer.
That sounds like a real burnout moment. And business is all about right idea at the right time, right? And it sounds like to bring it up to the present and where you are with Globemaking, there was something about right time in your life where you were looking to kind of step back and think about the next opportunity for you that was more in line with the life that you wanted to lead. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I could have done this earlier. I could have done it a little earlier, but I didn't come up with the idea for it. And a lot of the work I do in Globes, a lot of the construction work and a lot of the engineering behind it are things I've learned from property developing. And marketing, I've learned over the years about how to market yourself and things like that. So I definitely had learned enough of the skill set that when I set off doing this, I could tick many boxes that if I tried to do it 10 years before, it might have been a struggle. Equally, we were so lucky with the way that the world was developing, the way Instagram, for instance, was taking off. That propelled us right at the beginning. And back then in 2012, when Jade set about promoting us on Instagram, it was one directional. You interacted with what you wanted to interact with. You didn't have adverts, you didn't have anything else. It was a kind of a much cuter site where people could find you more easily, and also all the editors and magazines were finding us through Instagram. They were finding content through Instagram, and so then that allowed us to spread the word around the world. Essentially, we've had honestly so much press. You can obviously see on our website how much press we've had, and that's all down to Jade. If Instagram didn't exist, that would have been way more difficult. In 2009, 10, 11, I would write to magazine. If I was going away for the weekend, I'd pick up a magazine and Condé Nast Traveler or something and just see who the editor was and just write to them. So I got a few articles like that at the beginning, but we've been lucky with the way it's now so much easier as a company to engage with your customers directly.
You mentioned briefly earlier on, and I want to double back to it, that when you went on this journey to learn how to build Globes, you started investing a lot of your time and a lot of your financial resources in doing so. How did you think about the decision of investing that much in it?
It was momentum, and it was the fact that every month I spent more and more and more, and every month I became more and more embarrassed at how much I was spending, but equally I was pushing myself harder and harder to get to the end result because I knew I'd spent so much money. So by the time the first globe was made, I'd spent well into six figures. And that was continuing every month for years afterwards because we weren't selling that many. I think it was just that I have an unusual attitude to risk. I'm willing to take a bit of a risk on things. And I had some really good interactions with people. I met the head of science at Christie's auction house who lived locally, and he convinced me we would have people queuing around the block. When we developed the little globe and what we call the mini desk globe, the first 20 people who saw that bought either one or multiple versions of it. And so it kind of made me feel that the reaction to what I was making was so positive at the beginning that allowed the company to grow. And I had some huge commissions very quickly. I had an American gentleman commission a 50-inch globe in I think it was 2011. And then I sold two more of them. And then a local artist in London ordered 5 80-centimeter globes. I'd only made a 50-centimeter globe to this point. And suddenly I was taking deposits against globes that were enormous. I hadn't made any of the tooling or anything. I just said to people that it'll take as long as it takes. I have no idea. I'm just going to go out and try and do it. And I didn't know whether I could make it or not. So to be honest, the best thing about this is it's just been so much fun doing it. So I think of myself as an entrepreneur. It's like, well, yes, but if I was a cutthroat entrepreneur, we'd now be having much higher revenue and our profits would be much bigger and blah, blah, blah. This really is just so much fun to do. That's what keeps us all going. We're doing a huge globe, which is going over to a really famous American museum. And my artist who is painting it is working weekends and working till 8 in the evening every night. I only discovered a few days ago that she was putting in all this extra time. She hasn't asked for any overtime or anything. I mean, obviously she's going to get something very nice when we finished it, but she was doing all this without knowing of any recompense. So we're definitely very lucky in what we're doing. Is such a lovely product to make.
It's so clear from that story, not only loving what you do, but what a story of pride in your work to want to go the extra mile to get this product into the world. That's beautiful. And it sounds like this conviction that you have, you built pretty early on in the process. You said it was 3 to 4 months in to your globe building adventure that you said, okay, this is no longer a personal project. I'm going to make this a business. What was happening then that made you kind of flip the switch in your mind from project to this is a business?
One word, money. I'd spent way more than I had planned to spend on the whole project within 3 or 4 months. So it was, I cannot possibly justify spending probably 5 times more than this to get to the end goal for a birthday present. It had to be something more.
That's so interesting. I haven't heard that logic before, and I love it, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, I love what I'm doing. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. So therefore, I need to find a way to pay for it. So I'm going to figure out a way to create a business model.
Yeah, in a sense. That's what drove the decision making. That it seemed like a fantastic thing to be doing, but ultimately I have to have a financial hat on and realize that it is going to cost a certain amount of money, and that's only plausible if it's going to be a business.
And when you had that realization and made that decision, how did you set about building confidence that, oh, this can be a business? If you did run any tests or experiments to understand if that was even feasible?
There was another year and a half before I made a single product that could be sold. I spent crazy amounts of time and effort practicing, working out how to make perfect spheres, how to put flat paper onto a sphere. Those are the big 2 issues. that I had to learn. So I just had to just practice. I rented a shop on a back street in Stoke Newington, where the studio is now. It was basically an art studio that was a shop, and people would watch me doing stuff in the shop, but I had nothing to sell. It was a wonderful time because random things would keep on happening. Like one day, some old guy knocked on the window and he saw what I was doing, and he said, "You look like you're messing up. I'll come back later." But he said he wanted to help me with my font, and he said his name was James Mosley, and he lived 5 doors away from this shop that I was renting. And he went away, and I just thought, oh, it's just someone wanting to pass time of day. And then I looked him up online, and he's the world's leading authority in fonts and typography. And he gave me the font to use on my globes, which we use to this day. I just had so many wonderful experiences, and it was like me learning a new craft, having a midlife crisis in my 40s, and learning a craft to make up for all the previous life that I'd been either sitting behind desks or working too hard. And it was great. I kind of had a side hustle, which was the building was also a bit of a WeWork style thing. So I was renting out space to other people, and we just had this 5 of us, one doing the woodwork, 2 of us making, 1 of us painting. We would work in the day. We'd go to the pub every night. It was a lot of fun, but it was the culmination of 2 years of me practicing solidly to get to that point.
It sounds like you're really focused for those first 2 years on answering the question, can I physically make these? So within the question of can this be a business, there's can I make this product? I don't hear as much on the question of can I make this profitably and do people want this? Is that because you were just answering the question serially, or because you had confidence that those things would be true so long as you could make the globe?
I think, to be honest, I worked so hard in the previous job that then I worked 2 years working this all out. I'd cracked the whole thing. I was getting press, and we had an article in the FT How to Spend It, and I think I sold £50,000 of globes, and I just thought all of a sudden things were going to suddenly steamroll, and that just never really happened. It took a long time because I was introducing a product at a high price point, and there hadn't been a high price point like that for this product for hundreds of years. The old globes that were made in the 16, 17, they cost a fortune. They probably cost way more than the paintings on the wall that were made by the master painters of the times. I was trying to introduce this product into a market that didn't know it, because there was no one else doing it. So I had to just let things happen. We were honestly getting press in the first few years. I was doing interviews 2 times a week, 3 times a week. We were doing a video every single month. And it wasn't until the wonderful people at CBS came along, CBS Sunday Morning, and they shot a video over 3 days, and we did half a year's sales. So at that point, then I suddenly thought, okay, now this is, and that was in 18. And then they repeated it 6 months later as well, same result. And at that point, that was when, we suddenly went to an order book of 18 months. So the minimum that anyone would wait for a globe was 18 months, which is just ridiculous. And training people to make globes takes at least a year. So we were in a really difficult place. We had to train people up, but in the meantime, we couldn't stop taking orders, but we were telling people it's 18 months ahead, and so it was an interesting stage. I think this is a very odd business because scaling up in this business is really difficult.
What I hear in your story as you're describing it is to go back to that initial decision The question for you is, you were going to make this work. It doesn't sound like there was a question of if this is going to work. It's how do you make this work because you're going to. So let me focus on the thing that's most challenging right in front of me, which is how do I make this physical globe? And then set the price to whatever the price needs to be to make this business work now that I know what it takes to make this globe. And I am going to almost create demand. That's what I'm hearing is through your PR, through your storytelling, you're creating this demand that might have been latent for a product that hadn't existed for a very long time in the world.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. I had to get used to being interviewed and talking to camera, and it's not something that I was much good at. It's something I definitely had to learn. I was being photographed twice a week. I've got, I think, 20 of these blue shirts now because the CBS film, at that time I had one, I think, or two, and I was just going home, putting them in the washing machine and ironing them the next day so that they had me in the same coloured shirt. So I've definitely had to get used to both being interviewed but also giving talks. I give talks all over. I did one recently at Stanford, and obviously the Explorers, and we go and do all sorts of things around the world to spread the name of the company, because we are ultimately, or I am the person marketing the company. I'm the one trying to get people to trust in us and invest in us.
What is something that would surprise you about this business that you had no idea about when you first got into it?
The way that my team treat making the product. No one in the company wants to let anyone else down. Everyone takes their job really, really seriously, and I'm surprised that I've been lucky enough to find a team of people who are as passionate about making the product as me, and constantly want to improve things and suggest things, or suggest new designs or things that will improve the product.
That was Peter Bellerby talking about his journey starting and growing Bellerby Globemakers & Co. Here are the 3 things I'm taking away from that conversation, and I think that all of us who are doers with wild ideas can learn from. First, be deliberate about what winning means to you and keep updating that definition over time. Peter ran 2 financially successful businesses before running Globemakers, but over time he realized they weren't meeting his definition of success. The pizza software business was just boring to him. The nightlife business was hurting his health. So for his next endeavor to be successful for him, he needed it to be exciting. He needed it to support his health. And something new, he needed it to keep him close to craftsmanship and working with his hands. Second, overnight successes are sometimes actually multi-year slogs. It takes a lot of time and dedication to make ambitious dreams happen, and we don't always hear that part of the story. So sometimes we think that other successful people are just magicians, but they're not. They're hustling too. Peter didn't go from a birthday gift for his dad to all of a sudden being a major globe maker. He spent over 2 years toiling over the mechanics behind this globe before he sold a single one. And that's okay. That extreme dedication early on was a critical part of his later success. And finally, fake it till you make it. When Peter was running his nightlife business, a promoter came to him with an idea for a large concert. They weren't set up to do concerts. They didn't know what they were doing, but they said yes anyway, and they made it happen. And that was the thing that really turned the tide for them and made that business a success. Similarly, with his globes, he got an early order for a huge globe, far larger than anything he had ever made, but he didn't hesitate. He said yes, and then he figured out how to make it happen. So I want to know what you think. If you have any other thoughts about what you enjoyed in Peter's story and what you're taking away from it, I want to know. Send me a message on any social channel. I'm at @ThisIsAThingPod. This is Dana Moriello, and I can't wait to see you next week on This Is a Thing.